Oh, wow. Look at that. I didn't even have the correct. I don't know. I still have your smiling face. There we are. Technology is wonderful until it's not. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. If you're joining us live, welcome, whether you're on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. If you're listening to the archive version of this on the podcast, welcome as well. For those of you joining us live, don't just be a lurker. Jump in, share your city, your state, your name, your town, where in the world you're joining us from, because we have a treat for you today. Victor Antonio, CEO and founder of Sellinger Group, former TV star, rock star, keynote speaker, and author, and former electrical engineer. Victor, how you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing good. Love your intro music, and I like the Merc. I think that's the first time I saw the Merc. So don't lurk with the Merc, or
lurk with the Merc, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I used to have my face and the beard as my logo, and I killed it.
I remember that.
Because people would come up to me and they say, hey, man, I saw your logo. Your brand's on point. And I'd kind of be a jerk. I say, how could you tell my brand is on point just from looking at my logo? Because, see, a lot of people confuse brand with like a color scheme or a logo. And it's a lot deeper.
Sure.
So, yeah. How you doing today?
I actually liked it. But, yeah, man, I hear you. All is good, man. All is good. Let me see. We're cruising into the holiday. So all is good. Let me see. Do I have anything to report? No, life is good, Kirk. You know what I mean? It's just like it's been going really well after the adjustment, of course.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I call it, I did a presentation. I have a keynote now, and it's called Adapt, Thrive, and Grow. And talks about building a freedom mindset in interesting times. And, you throw on TV and it's commercial after in these challenging times, in these uncertain times, or people horrible times. Oh, I just got to get out of 2020. It's like, there's an old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I think they're interesting times. And RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, in 1966, he gave a speech in Cape Town, and he said, yeah, may you live in interesting times. And like it or not, these are interesting times. But you know what? Like, the creative flow of humans has never been greater, and our ability to build a new future is ever greater. And so I know you share that abundance mindset. And so 2020, in the speck of time, it's nothing. And we're going to get past it.
It's, as they say, that quickly. But yeah, I think it's interesting times in the sense that everybody's doing course correction, and I think for some people who are prepared, I mean, you've been virtual, I've been virtual even before we had to go virtual. So I don't think the adjustment for you and I was that drastic. We have already accepted it. But I think for a lot of people, it's been very disruptive, to use that phrase.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the thick of it, because that's one thing I want to talk to you about today. For those of you who don't know Victor, what have you been living under a rock? But I had the pleasure of interviewing Victor on my previous podcast, Freedom Mindset Radio. For those of you who aren't familiar with Victor, man, rock star keynote speaker, a lot of energy, had his own Spike TV show, Life or Debt, right? Life or Debt. He's host of the Sales Influence podcast, creator of the Sales Velocity Academy. You were president of global sales for a huge 400 million plus company. You shut it down, and now you're sales trainer to the stars, right? And keynote speaker, and you shared stages with Zig Ziglar, Daymond John, Rudy Giuliani, Paul Otellini, and John May. So that's who Victor Antonio is. One of those things I mentioned was sharing the stage. And there's a lot of folks. I went into this year I'm going to skyrocket my live speaking. And I was going to do live boot camps, and you were giving live speeches. And here we are, and I see your Sales After Dark program that you do, your live program, and I see you doing a lot more virtual. Last time we spoke, you had a green screen behind you. Now I see you got this cool setup, etc. Is that in your house?
Yeah, this is my one of the rooms upstairs at the second floor is totally been converted into a studio. So just on this side, if you point the camera that way, the whole wall is green now. So that's my green screen. This is the studio. I usually have a smart board right here. I push it off to the side. And then if I tilt the camera that way on the third side, it's a white paneled background. So I got 3 different looks depending on what I want to do. So I had to become flexible, man.
Did you do that after COVID or before COVID? Was that already in the works, or was this part of your adaptation?
The green screen was already pre-COVID. What happened is that, look, my speaking career has always been the bathtub effect. The beginning of the year and the last quarter of the year, always big numbers for me, big traveling times. And in the middle of the year, just kind of, dips. So I was finishing up a run in Puerto Rico. It was March 13th. I was doing my last gig in Puerto Rico, flew back. on the 13th, and the 20th, boom, pandemic shut down. And I remember a week or two, maybe 3 weeks after that, maybe the first week of February, something like April, I told my wife, I think I'm done for the year. She's like, what? I said, I think I'm done. I said, this is looking bad. And literally cancellations started rolling in. And all my speaking for the rest of the year just totally wiped out, like zero, goose egg, nada, zilch. And so at that moment, it's one of those, all right, what do we do now? And the word pivot always comes into your head. So I said, okay, let's redo the studio, right? Get the microphones, get the smart board, get everything, and let's go virtual and let's embrace virtual. And it's been going really well, actually. Less traveling, a whole lot less traveling. And it's been a very fascinating experience to go virtual and be able to do this and connect with people. So it's a different world, man. I'm sure for you, it's almost the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I did a keynote last month in the Cayman Islands from a Comfort Inn meeting room in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and I told my wife, I said, when everything kind of returns and they start doing live events, I don't know that I'm going to want to go back to doing the live events. And I think it'll be some time before you get people crowding into a meeting room and doing those types of things. There's just going to be a certain amount of people who are worried and concerned about it. How did it change your sales process? Because I know there's a lot of speakers who rely either on speakers bureaus or referrals, and it's like, oh my gosh, well, that's done. How did it change your sales process, specifically when it came to getting those gigs?
It didn't, because I've been inbound marketing for, since 2008. I tell people the reason I got started with video. So like today on my YouTube channel, we have like over 1,200 videos. And I started that YouTube channel after I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It or Crushing It, one of the two titles. Yeah. And I remember at that time, Gary V's like video all in. And I realized at that time, I was an unknown and I couldn't compete with the well-known names and brands out there. So I said, boom, I'm all in on video since 2008. And so I've been inbound marketing ever since. So it really hasn't changed. What I did add to the repertoire was what you mentioned earlier, my Sales After Dark live stream. And I do that 3 times a week. And that was really another way of garnering more mind share in the evening, because nobody else is doing it in the evening talking about sales. I said, let me see if I can grab that little market. Somebody's sipping, some wine or something, and I can talk sales. And so that's really the only thing that changed. But the process is still the same, with the exception is I don't have to fly. So people contact me, says, Victor, I'd like you to speak at this virtual conference. Can you come? Now, price points have changed, right? Because I was, I don't mind sharing because it's just pure openness and transparency. It was $15,000 to $20,000 a keynote, and so now it's the range it's about $5,000 where I'm booking at right now. I probably could get more. I know other speakers are getting more, but it really depends on where you're comfortable and where you want to push your price points and how many gigs you want to do. And so that's been the biggest change. But my virtual workshops have picked up. Getting invited to virtual keynotes, my learning management system, the Sales Velocity Academy, that shot up. So now revenues from that. I've got a sponsorship revenue. I started licensing my Sales Velocity Academy, which I'd never done in the past. So now I've licensed it to these different companies. And so there's more revenue streams coming in that way. And the podcast is taken off. The Sales Influence podcast, I think last month we did about 140,000 downloads, which is not bad. And so I'm super happy about that. And so we're going to work on getting on sponsorships. I think I'll have one in January for that as well. My point to all this is that even though my revenue went down on the keynote side, what happened is I shifted my attention to where I can generate other revenue streams. And I think by the time we come back to March again, 1 year later, I'll be at or above where I was at year over year. Yeah.
It's amazing. I put out on social media back in March or April, when this thing started, that if you're forced to change your vision due to a pandemic, it wasn't the right vision. And people say, well, what if my vision is a restaurant or a vision? I'm a photographer and I can't have people in my studio. I say, well, no. Your job shouldn't be your vision. Your job should be an objective on the way to your vision. And the closer you get to your daily outcomes, you adapt. So like you said, listen, I'm going to be at or above where I was. If you have high goals and good goals and solid goals for the year, and something shuts down in March, you don't have to change that overall goals, but you can flow like water around it, adapt your daily, how you're going to get there. So redo the studio, start doing remote, and just plot a different path to get to that big vision, right?
I mean, that's all it is. I mean, even when you look at restaurants, let's say you mentioned a restaurant. I love the way a lot of them adapted, right? Is that they went online, started using apps, really marketing the heck out of it. Everybody who gets it adapts very quickly. I mean, I'm pointing out the obvious, but the question that becomes is why is it that people are able to adapt sometimes and just kind of give it and throw in the towel? And I think I always highlight there's three modes people are in when a pandemic hits or any type of disruptive event hits. They're either in the fight mode. I'm gonna fight my way through this, which is kind of my mindset, probably your mindset as well. Then there's the people who go into the freeze mode, which you're not going to do anything, right? And then, there's the flight mode, which is just going to run from everything, shut down everything, quit, maybe not be, and maybe just find something else. I'm in the fight mode all the time. And I mean that in a positive sense, not a negative sense. Like, let me see how I can figure this out. And it's always like a Rubik's Cube. That's always been my analogy for success, that it's all about figuring out the Rubik's Cube. There's always a way of doing it. It's just got to figure it out.
Yeah. And we have everything we need right up here. I mean, it's a creative flow. And if you allow that to happen, but you can't, that flow shuts off if you're in freeze mode or flight mode. I mean, it's your all of a sudden it's like, you can't think, you actually, when the cortisol goes up. So I did boxing for a few years. When that bell rings, it's easy to watch a boxing match and you're like, well, why didn't the guy, duck? Why did he take that punch? Well, when that bell goes off, your cortisol and your adrenaline is like in your throat. You get dumber. And if you're not trained to have your subconscious know what to do without thinking, then you're in trouble, right? And so if you go into flight or flight mode with business, you're dumber, and you're just going to sit there. And like you said, but before we continue this discussion, I want to give a shout out to those joining us live. Chris Stone, who I know we both know. Thank you. He says, look at these two legends. Thank you so much, Chris.
By the way, Chris, I got to get a extra shout out. He does all the production of my videos and my audios, and also did the intro for the Sales After Dark. Awesome job. Great dude to work with. You should hire him if you need somebody. It's so, he does a great job. I've seen your intro, the slow motion walking out on the, it's wonderful. It's an action movie. Yeah, he makes me look good.
We got Liliana joining us from Omaha, Nebraska. She's got a question which we'll get to, and then we Akash Rout from Springfield, Illinois. Thank you so much. As the rest of anyone joins the Sunday platform, please come in, save your complaints and your tough questions, of course, for Victor though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
So, what I'd like to you mentioned you got 1,200 videos, and you also mentioned Gary Vee.
Yep,
and that's a lot of content on a regular basis. You do your live stream. You're constantly putting out new videos. I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn and Twitter, and it's like something, and you have something, and I forgot what it's called now, sales bites or sales. They're like
sales. Oh, the sales influence moments is another one. So it's just like sales bites. It could be something like that. Yeah.
You're putting them out. You're throwing those things out on a regular basis. And a lot of business owners are like, oh my gosh, where do I come up with enough content? I'm running out of things to say. And one of the things that Gary Vee says is document, don't create. Like every conversation you have with a potential client and an existing client can be something. Where do you get your ideas, your inspiration that then is manifested in 1,200 videos, a video, every day or every couple of days?
Yeah, I've had that question. Victor, don't you get tired talking to sales? No. Two, haven't you exhausted every possibility of sales? I go, no. Because what happens is, like, this, it's like when you work a market niche, the deeper you go into the niche, the more riches you find. And it's no different with content. And so what I've discovered is, and so where do I get my inspiration from? Some things happen to me. I'll go to Best Buy. Something happens to me like, all right, that's it. I have a phone call with the customer. They ask me something stupid. I go, never ask that again. Write that down. And sometimes it's not so much about something new as it about giving it a different perspective or different look. I'm an avid reader just like you. And sometimes I read something and it triggers me like, no, I wouldn't do that. Disagree with that. Let me go give my opinion because it's my video. Let me give my opinion. And so I think, to me, I want to create, it's like a body of work. That's what I like to think of. I like to create a body of work of sales stuff. And again, the world of selling is changing. I would argue that it's more buyer driven now than sales driven, but we're living in exciting times. We got AI coming our way. We got all these different enablement platforms that are being like really hyped up. And so I get excited about this stuff. So I think that makes it a little easier, Kurt, is that I'm excited about it. And I like to look for different angles.
One angle that you write about, and you mentioned AI, is Sales Ex Machina. I can see the book behind you. I believe is that your latest book? That's your newest book, right? That latest book.
Correct.
And you talk about AI, and you wrote it pre-pandemic, of course. You wrote it, what, two years ago, I think, maybe a year or two ago?
2018. Yeah, 2018. Going on 3 now. Yeah.
And we're seeing now an explosion in AI. In large part, it's sped up because of necessity and because of what's going on today. Are there any things that you wrote about in the book that you've seen all of a sudden explode and people are like, oh, wow, it's so new? And you're like, hey, man, I wrote about that years ago.
Yeah, I mean, like the natural language programming stuff. You see companies like Gong.io. You see Einstein with Salesforce. You see Microsoft with Watson. All this stuff is happening right now, and they're being implemented. The chatbots haven't taken off, but the virtual assistants is coming. These are people that you'll have the avatar, and there's actually a person talking to you. So all these things are coming. I think the thing I highlighted a lot was the use of data. IoT, Internet of Things, all this data they're collecting on you to create these profiles of you and your buying preferences, all that's in the book, and it really highlights what's going on now, and everything is basically coming. It's not that I was prescient or anything. I was just very aware of what was going on because I'm a techno freak, right? I'm an engineer by background, and I've used AI in the past when I first started in engineering. So I love the concept. So I am in I'm like in my space now because we got technology and sales merging, and this is a beautiful place to be. That's kind of like my ideal, cross point. So I'm enjoying this, but everything that's in the book is actually happening right now.
You mentioned, you're a techno person, and you were an electrical engineer by trade or by education, by schooling, and so I smile whenever I look at the sales velocity. Okay, some people talk about speed, and some people you ask them about velocity, it's speed, but of course it's speed and direction.
Correct.
Why did you name it sales velocity, and what does that mean? Speed and direction, how does it apply to sales?
Well, so for my calculus nerds out there, if you differentiate distance, you get velocity. If you differentiate velocity, you get acceleration. And so to me, differentiating distance to get velocity is the real equation, right? By the way, dV over dt, for those of you who want to know. And so I got to give credit. I was watching a presentation by a gentleman by the name of Donald Daly, and he was the one that I saw use the sales velocity equation. It wasn't mine. I tell people it's not mine. Donald Daly created that equation. And I go, what a nerd, because this guy also comes from the tech side, right? And he actually created the equation. And I looked at the equation, which is if you take the number of opportunities, multiply by the close rate, multiply by the average deal size, divided by sales cycle, you'll get your velocity. And I looked at that, and my engineering brain goes, that makes so much sense to me. Because there's only 4 ways to really grow your sales. Increase the number of opportunities, pipeline, right? Increase your close rate, increase your average deal size. And if you divide by your sales cycle, if you can shorten that, you get velocity. And so when I saw that, it was almost like, I'm not saying that, the beaming light came down and I heard the Gregorian chants in the background and enlightenment hit me. But yeah, it was kind of like that. I was like, this is what I want to preach, because what I've done, or what Donald Daly did with that equation, is he simplified it into 4 levers of selling. Now think about that. If you know that there's only 4 ways to really grow your sales: conversion rate, pipeline, average deal size, sales cycle. What if I can work on one of those a month, right? Every month I focus in on one of them. And then all of a sudden, if you do a 10% increase on all 3 on top, the numerator, and a 10% decrease, sales cycle, on the denominator, you'll grow your revenue by 47%. Who wouldn't want to see that? And so the simplicity of that equation is what drove me to say, this is how I want to structure my academy. So that's where it came from.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love that simplicity. We actually joke. I read the Tao Te Ching every morning just as a meditative thing. And my kids find it funny that the Chinese word for simplicity and plainness is poo. So they laugh, oh yeah, just looking for poo, Dad, looking for poo.
By the way, I got to tell you, there's a Latin phrase I've always loved, which is why it's kind of like part of, how you always have kind of your core beliefs. Yeah. And there's an old Latin phrase that says, natura simplicitatem amat, which nature loves simplicity. And it's almost like Occam's razor, right? The simplest answer is probably the right one. I love simplicity. And I go back to nature is simple, and we have to keep things simple. Again, there's chaos beneath the water level, but the simple part's on top. And that's what I love about the equation.
When you think about simplicity, there's a lot of folks who run their own businesses, and they're very good accountants. or they're really good financial advisors, or they're really good engineers or at HR or whatever, and they have the best possible product, but they're not growing. But they really want to grow, and they sit around thinking 2-3 days, I'm committed to my business. Why am I not growing? And then you look at, opportunities, sales cycle, average guy. And when you get down to simplicity, I did a podcast episode on this recently where it's like, if you're not having conversations with potential clients, i.e. generating opportunities, and those conversations, we're having conversations with potential clients now doing this. I mean, online, offline, whatever it is, like, you're not going to have clients. If you don't have clients, you don't have a business. I don't care how wonderful of an accountant you are, but getting it down to that simple thing, Mike Weinberg, who we both know, and he, when I had him on my show last year, he's like, the reason you're not selling is because you're not spending time selling. You're spending your time shuffling papers, organizing your CRM, doing everything except selling. So when you get down to simplicity, generating those opportunities on the front end and having those conversations, do you ever find, and you get in where it's like, whether they're salespeople or entrepreneurs, they're doing everything except bringing in those opportunities? Is it a motivational issue you find? Is it like a priority and time management issue? Is it a lack of systems and processes issue?
It's a great question you ask, and I found the best answer to that question. I'm a fan of the Heath brothers. I think it's Chip and Ben Heath.
Yeah.
And they wrote a book called, I think it was called Switch. And in there, they highlight this model that just like, because I love simple visual models. And he said, visualize an elephant, right? And on top of the elephant is the rider. He says, now, elephant stands for the emotional part. R, the rider, stands for the logical part, right? The prefrontal cortex, right? He says, now imagine that you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat a donut. Not going to eat any sweets this week. Well, guess what? You go to some event or you go by the donut shop, you smell it, and then next thing you know, the emotional elephant takes off, and the poor rider, the logical person saying, no, we said we weren't going to do this, has no control, right? So the elephant got emotional, ate the donut. Then let's flip it over. Have you ever thought logically, you know what? I need to eat better. Logically, here's what I need to do. But if the emotional elephant isn't buying into your logic, there's no way the rider can actually get the elephant to move, right, in that emotional direction. So that was kind of like the juxtaposition of those two. He says, what you want to do is get the rational rider in tune with the emotional side. Logically, we should do this. Emotionally, here's why it matters, right? You're in line. That's a business owner. Business owner says, logically, I need to grow my sales. Emotionally, I know that if I don't do this, this is going to cost me, right? So they're aligned. So then they added the third flavor. What's the problem? He says, the third part that's missing is you need to shape the path. That was the phrase they used. You need to shape the path. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Shape the path is that you need to almost like choreograph the steps. What I find, and I'm going to zoom back, what I find of why people don't do something, people want to say, it's lack of motivation, it's lack of integrity, they really don't care, they're happy where they're at, they're complacent. No, I don't think so. In many cases, in the majority of cases, I believe what happens is, logically, they know they need to do something. Emotionally, they feel that they need to do it, but they just don't know how until somebody comes along and shapes the path. Why do you think Jenny Craig is so popular? Not because it's the greatest food. People logically go, I need to eat better. Emotionally, I think it's good for me to do that. But when you give me a calendar of what I need to eat on what day and you're calorie counting for me, you just shaped the path for me. So now imagine if I'm talking to a business owner and they're saying, I want to grow my business, Victor. If not, I'm struggling. This is not good. I got to fire my people. Mostly I invested. And I said, all right, what's your plan? And what do you think they typically say? I don't know. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And what they're scared of is that they don't have a plan. And if they do have a plan, they haven't committed to the plan. That's the difference. They haven't committed to the plan. So I'll use me as an example, and then you give me your opinion. I committed to inbound marketing in 2008 with Gary Vee, right? Committed to inbound marketing. And that's why I'm just a machine, because I committed to the plan. I didn't say, I'm going to try 20 videos and we'll see how it works. I'm like, no, this works. I know this is going to work. I'm going to make it work. I'll figure out how to make it work. And dang it, it's been working for 12 years now. Where I haven't made a cold call. I can't tell you the last time I made a cold call because it's been working for me. So I think it's being able to shape the path and then being committed to whatever that path is.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I agree with it. And I tell people, I time block. A lot of people time block, but they only time block certain things. I time block everything. we time block date nights. I mean, I time block everything. I don't time block when I'm going to get up in the morning because I think alarm clocks are bad for your health. But what I do time block is 9:30 I go to bed, because then that guarantees I get up at 6 or 5:30. Right. And so I get up. And so from then on, I time block, and I time block everything for good or for bad. If it's not on my calendar, I don't do it. And it's that Jenny Craig thing. It's on my calendar, so I don't have to think. It's there telling me turn right, turn left. And like literally, I just let myself be dumb and be like, what do I do now? Where am I going now?
So Kurt, it's a great point you're bringing up, and you're one of the very few people to actually highlight this. There's that book, Atomic Habits, that really highlights this. I forgot the guy's name, James Clear.
Yeah,
and he talks about how you make your process flow easy to get into. Like when I come up to the studio, one of my biggest hassle was setting everything up. I'll get the lighting right, get the green screen. Now I literally just turn on switches. And there's no effort. I made it easy. You're talking about time block. You schedule it out, and you jokingly said, I just make myself dumb all day and follow the schedule. But you're just basically making it frictionless for you to go through the day. And a lot of people simply don't know how to do that. I'm glad you brought that up.
There's something, I can't remember where I saw it. I meant to look it up yesterday because I was talking to a client about it. But, people getting up early, and they want to get up early and go for a run or go to the gym. They found that, but you wake up and it's 5:30 and removing friction, it's like some crazy number. Like it increases your adherence to getting up and going to the gym by like 70% if you simply lay out your clothes or pack your gym bag or untie your shoes and have them ready to go. Like that's it. That will help you get healthy. People don't realize that. They think it's willpower and I'm just weak, and so I got to grind through it. Well, your grinding is by definition, right? Is a lot of friction.
Yeah.
If you build that flow.
Well, it's funny because it reminded me from an engineering standpoint, we always talked about the coefficient of friction. Our job is to reduce the coefficient of friction to reduce heat. And that's the same thing you're doing. When I read Atomic Habits, I said, oh man, he's just reducing friction. That's all he's doing. The coefficient of friction goes down. And for example, I set up everything the night before, right? The coffee pot set up, everything. So I just hit the button. I don't want to like pour the water, get the coffee and do all that stuff in the morning. I just want to go bam, or set the alarm and let it go off by itself. And so what you're saying is, people miss it. It's so easy. It isn't willpower. It's just, why don't you set yourself up for success by creating the environment? So Atomic Habits, highly recommended book, by the way. You
and my dad would have loved each other. He was a mechanical engineer, and he designed all the electronic switches on the Boeing 777. Has a patent for it, actually. Nice. And just used to. I remember when we first moved to Illinois, he was president of Chicago Gear Works, and that was his job and everything. So as you were talking about friction and all that, I was thinking about my dad.
A true engineer. Like I said, coming from an engineering standpoint, I mean, what's helped me today, Kurt, one of the questions I get is, Victor, what's helped you being successful in sales? And I have to remind people, I started out in engineering and did the hard work, did the software, the hardware, the firmware, systems design, and then actually got into sales. And then carried the bag, or I like to say carry the briefcases with the projectors and the booths and all that. And then did all that, grew, and then decided to become a speaker/trader. So when I talk to people today, it's not like I read a couple of books and said, hey, let's do some sales training. It's like, dude, I suffered the slings and arrows. I was the sales guy, then I was the sales VP and president at one time, and I managed all that. And so I think that experience has allowed me. But I always say, this is where Gary Vee and I disagree. Gary says you don't need an education. I think in many cases, an education, if you get the right one, is valuable. My engineering degree is still paying dividends to this very day. So it really depends on the degree you get. So it's not that college is not important. It depends on the degree you get.
Yeah. I was political science. I've never used it. But if I was an engineer, if I was a doctor, if I was a lawyer, absolutely, 100%. One thing that you said the last time we were on that I use and I steal and I give you credit all the time, and I with my clients, is that you don't have to love what you sell. So you and I, if I took my hat off, we don't love combs, right? We don't love hairbrushes.
Nope.
But you said you have to love the impact,
right,
of whatever product or service you're selling has on your customers. One thing I find is that salespeople, even folks who have been in sales for like 25, 30 years, when they come on a potential client, they do what I like to call is verbally vomiting on them.
Mhm.
Features, bullet points, bells, whistles. If they're
Mhm.
selling a comb, where the comb was made, and they go in knowing what the client needs. And by golly, they are going to sell that client what they need. And it turns out if they had listened, they might learn that the client wants something completely different. Do you see that when you work with teams and folks? And why do you think that's our default?
I don't know if I mean, I see everybody do the verbal vomiting. What I see a lot that I find quite shocking is that people don't understand the value of what they sell. By what I mean is that so my phrase is you don't need to love what you sell. You should love what it does for your customer. Now, if you love what you sell and you love what it does for your customer, that's bonus time. But look, I can sell a comb. I don't love combs because I don't even use one. But if it makes my customer happy, hey, it's a win-win. And so when you ask people, what is your value? You get the basic. Well, Victor, we provide customer service 24/7, 365. We care about our customers. We don't treat them like a number. And you know what? We're always constantly improving our products. And you know what? When we talk to our customers, we really listen. It's not just about passive, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's what everybody else says. But how is it helping your customer's business or in their mindset or whatever, if it's a physical product, whatever it is? How is it really helping them? And they'll go, maybe one level. Well, it helps their business grow. And I go, well, how does it help their business grow? And they'll explain it. I said, so is it increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share? That's my value trinity, right? It does one of the three things. Increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share. Which one? And they'll go, well, it helps them reduce costs. I said, well, what else does it do? And they're like, boom, I hit a wall with them. And that's it. I hit a wall. And I'm like, and they go, well, just, it helps them reduce costs, makes them faster and better. I go, what else does it do for them? And they stop and I go, would you agree that if you're reducing their costs, they probably have bigger profits? Yeah. Do you think with those bigger profits, they can probably take that money, invest it in the company, and actually increase their revenue? Yeah. Maybe increase their market. Yeah. Which means they're going to stay in business longer. Yeah. On top of that, how many people do they employ? 500 people. Each person has 2.5 family members. Okay. Multiply that out. That's how many people you're actually helping. And by the way, all the suppliers that supply to that company, you're feeding them as well. So don't just tell me you're selling a widget. You're selling impact that ripples. And they don't see it that way. Yeah. And I think when you start seeing it that way, I had a customer, I'm doing a virtual event for them. I'll just say that they sell to the government. And what they are trying to reprogram their people is that, no, we don't sell to the government. The government really supports the VA, and we're really helping the veterans. And it's making that full link to value. That's where I see the biggest issue. Yeah, there's people who will vomit all over you with their feature, benefit, advantage, gain, blah, ad nauseum. But the biggest problem I see is that they really don't understand the value they're providing. Because if they understood the value they're providing, it would give them that internal third drive type of motivation that would keep them going forward.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That mindset and knowing that value and understanding the value, it'll help you sell better. It'll help your potential customers and existing customers have a greater appreciation, especially if you're up against 9 or 10 other competitors who are selling, who don't know their value, and so but waking up in the morning and going to work and getting up and selling something, knowing that you're affecting 10 times as many people as you originally thought is, I have a client, he's got a bookkeeping company. And he would talk about Xero versus QuickBooks and the spreadsheets and the numbers, et cetera. He figured out that one of the impacts he saves marriages. He works with family-owned companies where one spouse is doing the books and the other spouse is doing the operations. And it's like, hey, honey, do you have the P&L? No, I'm 3 weeks behind. Boom, marital argument every quarter. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm like, listen, these people don't know the difference between QuickBooks and Xero or your mother's elbow, right? It's like, what is that end impact you have in that value you provide? And that's so wonderful. And I think it's key to scaling your business too, right? If you know your true value.
You can scale it. One of the things I've learned, I've learned to appreciate the difference between these two words, confidence and conviction. Everybody says, as salespeople, we need to have more confidence. No, you don't. You need to have more conviction. And I think if you understand the value of what you're offering, Kurt, it's like you have this conviction, because if I know I can help you with my product, I'm going to say, Kurt, damn it, listen to me. I'm telling you, this is going to help you. And then just feeling that conviction, you're going, all right, Victor, I'll listen to you. Okay, just ease up. What do you got? I think people need to have that conviction, and they don't. They sell it with alligator arms. You know what I mean by that, right? Instead of like reaching over, this is what you want. They go, oh, we have that right there. And maybe you'll want that. I mean, that's selling with alligator arms. People who sell with conviction are reaching over the table, trying to grab you by the scruff of the neck. Listen, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to increase your revenue, reduce your costs, expand your market. Listen to what I'm saying. And I think that's the difference. Forget confidence. Give me conviction. I'll take that any day.
Yeah. And when you say that, it's conviction based on a cooperative process of value for value exchange versus there's some people who do conviction, like the car dealer who blocks the door and you can't leave. And they're trying to coerce you into buying something they don't want. But I think a lot of people, the alligator arms, it's that way too, because they wake up and they look at sales as I'm going to wake up and I got to make a bunch of calls or talk to a bunch of people today and convince them to unwillingly reach into their pocket and give me money for something they don't actually want to buy. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how many people have that mindset. And so then you have alligator arms because you're like apologetic. Like, I'm sorry, I got to sell this to you.
Let's see. That's it. They're being apologists. They're not being like this protagonist to say, look, here, I'm going to help you. But it's always fascinating because people sometimes sell a product and they don't even believe in the product that they're selling, or they're not fully vested. That's part of the conviction, right? And the thing is, a client can smell it. Do you know what I mean? They can sense it when you're not all in, because if you're just presenting it and going, we've all seen that presentation where they go through the slides, the bullet points. But I love the person that said, you know what? Screw the slides. Let me talk to you. Let me whiteboard this thing for you. And then you go, and then all of a sudden, you know that the person's into what they're selling. And I think that is also missing. It's that conviction, the power to drive that value. We're both Ayn Rand fans, right? We believe in value for value, right? That's the exchange we always go for, value for value, true capitalism in my book. And so I try to create value for the customer. And if I create value, do I want to get paid a commission? You're damn right. That's win-win.
Yeah, you bring up Atlas Shrugged, and we've talked offline about it, and you brought it up, and in the end they find Galt's Gulch, right? Mm-hmm. And Galt's Gulch is just what you mentioned. The engineers engineer, the miners mine, the railroad dude builds the railroad. No one's forced to buy, and he's not forcing anyone to do it, but you trade ability to move your goods on the railroad for some gold. Mm-hmm. And at its most basic level, people think, oh, that's pie in the sky, etc. I mean, trading posts, right? We didn't used to have money. You would trade pelts for money or guns or something, right? And we talked about simplicity. That's what it's all about. But first, you got to have those opportunities and those conversations. You talked about those 4 things. Those opportunities, you gotta go out and start. You have conversations with people through your videos. Other people pick up the phone and do it. Either way, you got to do it.
You got to do it. One of the things I was training with Grant Cardone. We were doing a 3-day event down in Miami. And Grant said something. I don't know if it was his phrase, but it's like when you hear it said a certain way, you go, okay, it hit bottom with me. He goes, and he was telling the audience, some guy was complaining about, well, if I'm talking to a customer and I'm afraid to bring up pricing, this and that. And Grant just says something brutal like this. Says, dude, you don't have a sales problem. You have a prospecting problem. And it just encapsulated what he said. And basically he was saying, I said, if you only have 2 customers because that's your pipeline, then you're going to be desperate. And that's not your real problem. Selling is not your real problem. Your prospecting is your real problem. Because if you had 100 people lined up for your product, you would sell totally different. 2 people, you're desperate just to close 1. If I got 100, what am I doing? People who can afford me, move to this side of the room. People who can't, move to that side of the room. Totally different sales process. And that stuck with me because I think a lot of businesses are struggling with that first part of the velocity equation, which is the number of prospects in their pipeline. But you have to pick a philosophy, almost like a philosophy in terms of how do I go to market? And what is it? Is it single channel, multi-channel? What am I doing? And then figure that plan out. And I think that's where most companies need to really build that foundation before anything else, closing rates, increase average deal size or sales cycle falls into place. That pipeline, your go-to-market to bring people in is your biggest hurdle.
Yeah, if you have no one to increase your prices, it doesn't much matter. It's Joe Peachy, who's been a sales coach and mentor for me. I don't know if you know, down in Florida.
What's his name?
Joe Peachy, P-I-C-I.
Is that his real name?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
My calculus teacher used to always write an equation, and when he saw it, he would always go, Peachy. It just reminded me.
Yeah, he's a paisan, He and one thing he says is, I fall in love with my clients, not my prospects. And the way you enable yourself to do that is you have enough prospects that you're not, like you said, out of desperation, obsessing about them day in and day out. And I didn't quite get that until I started upping the amount of prospects and proposals I was sending out. And when I went from 4 proposals where I know everyone's name and I can picture their face, and every night I go to bed praying that, oh my gosh, they're going to come into me the next day. And I expanded that to 40 proposals. At 40 proposals, it's like, when you jump in, I love you, I'm going to put your picture on my wall. Until I still love you, I'm going to communicate value, but you got to jump in with the value.
And that's what it is, right? Because as you scale, as you pointed out, as you scale, you begin to say, okay, you're not desperate anymore. In fact, you can move your price points up. People begin to see the value. I had one lady say to me, she literally approached me in a workshop about a couple of years back. She goes, Victor, I got a question for you. I said, what? She said, I've reached out to this customer almost like 9 times, and I've not been able to close them. What should I do? And I looked at her and I said, move on. And it was, yeah. And she's like, what? Move on. And I don't care if it's your sales presentation, whatever. They're not ready to make a decision. I'd move on. And again, it was that mindset that I need to try to close this one. And you know what it was? That she only had like 3 or 4 people in her portfolio that she was working on. And she was desperate to keep them. And what we do as salespeople is we lie to ourselves. We rationalize. If you break the word rationalize apart, you know what it means, right? The ability to ration lies to yourself. And you rationalize why you should keep that person in the pipeline when you know you should boot them out of the pipeline. Another cardinal sin by salespeople.
That's awesome. I love how you explain that. And I hadn't heard that, the ration lies. That's wonderful. I'm going to steal that. I'll give you credit.
It's all yours.
So final question. The sales trinity, and you brought it up. You shared a post. Well, I saw it this morning. You may have shared it yesterday or 2 days ago. Yeah, I never know how the LinkedIn algorithm works.
Yeah.
And you made some differences, or you made some changes to the sales trinity, it being 2020. And instead of, I think, grow and increase, you cross those out and you put retain.
Correct.
For someone with an abundance mindset, what's Victor doing? Why is he saying that? He's settling. Can you explain why you changed it from grow and increase to retain?
Because when I frame that conversation, look, I get the abundance piece. We always want to acquire new clients, but sometimes when the ocean gets a little rocky, we need to stabilize. And there was a study done by Harvard that said if you increase your retention by simply 5%, i.e. reduce your churn by 5%, that could impact your bottom line, your profit margin between 75 and 80%. So think about that for a second. So now I'm talking about a retention strategy. That's all I'm talking about, because it's harder to get together with clients. So what I'm saying is, let's shift towards retention. Let's make sure that we got home base covered. Okay, got my major accounts. As you say, love my clients. Everybody happy? Everybody happy? Love and kisses, everybody. Okay, don't go anywhere. Then I go, okay, now let me go find some new customers. That's really what I meant, that's a phase that we have to go through right now just to stabilize everything that's going on. Because, unless you're Zoom, Netflix, or some of these companies that are just taking off, you're trying to figure out, how do I hold on to what I got? And I think that's a real mindset. How do I hold on to what I got before I try to grab even more that I know I may not be able to get?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of retention is a lot less than going out and tell clients those conversations you talk about, those sales opportunities. Never forget that your existing clients are potential future clients as well. Right. And so have those conversations. And I chimed in on a Sales After Dark 2 weeks ago, and you were talking about that, calling in, checking in with your clients. And I think I jokingly said, imagine how that's somehow like revolutionary to some people, or, oh my gosh, calling my clients and seeing how they're doing.
Yeah. Like, what's up? I'm not even trying to say. And by the way, the second part to really kind of complete the sustain or hold on to the people, keep in mind that I'm also talking retention, but I'm also talking about upselling and cross-selling my existing customer base. So depending on whose study you believe, there's about a 30% potential revenue bump by upselling and cross-selling. So if I'm thinking strategically, my costs are out of whack. Client acquisition costs have gone up after the pandemic. Getting to a customer, trying to get the deal has probably gone up. Now the cost of sales has gone down. That's good. But I want to hold on to what I got, and then I want to sell more to what I have. And I'm telling you, that's to me, if we're looking for quick hits to stabilize the ship during this year, which is 2020, and I think 2021 is going to be no different, Kurt. I think I was reading a book called Apollo's Arrow. Apollo shoots arrows, disease, famine, all that good stuff. And the PhD, the doctor in this book, basically just looks at past pandemics and then forecasts what's going to go on. And he's thinking about whether you get a vaccine or not, distribution of the vaccine, and then the part about the post-traumatic stress people are suffering through right now, about wanting to, you say, go back to a live event. He says you won't see something that's, I guess, resembles normal till 2024. Now, I'm going, I buy that. Now, you may disagree with me. Everybody's watching may disagree. That's fine. My mindset is we're not going back to a real normal till 2024, which means 2022, 23, what am I doing to stabilize my ship and grow my business?
Yeah. And just having a realization of human nature, which is what you're talking about. It's not like you have to say, well, I'll go to live events. That's not what you're talking about. You could say, well, I don't like that. You don't have to like it. But if you're running a business, you've got to plan for it. And you've got to realize human nature and how people act and react and just know, okay, this is going to happen. I mean, there are some people who have completely outsourced themselves to chance. Well, I'm just gonna
steal it that one.
Yeah, please.
Finally, I can just rip something up. Outsource themselves. That is beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's just a business cycle, and I'm just going to get through it, and I'm going to hunker down until they get a vaccine. It's like, listen, this has nothing to do with a commentary about vaccine. That would be the topic of another podcast. But if you're putting all your hopes in anything other than what are you going to do, you're outsourcing your life, your mindset, your success, your future to chance or other people. I agree.
And my goodness, then you might as well just hunker down and wait for a check, right? go apply for your loans now.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that phrase, hunker down, just way down. I'm like, what are you waiting for? What are you hunkering down for? The thing is, the market is changing. Depending again on whose numbers you believe, 50% of the jobs are not coming back. They'll be either displaced, replaced, or transformed into something else. So given that being a fact, where does that leave you? That's what I would be thinking. And that's how I think. And I go, where do I need to be? Almost that trajectory. Where do I need to be in a year or two to make sure I can insulate myself from some of this change? And I think, for me, this because you have the freedom lifestyle mindset. And that is, how do I create, as an entrepreneur, multiple streams of income? So if one dries up, I got another spigot over here. And that's a different way of doing it. And by the way, businesses think this way alike, right? Multiple product line, multiple divisions. And which is why you're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions. The acquisitions are to create different channels to fortify what they're doing. So that should be the mindset. How do I create revenue streams? Because if I can simplify this, and I'll end with this, Kurt, is that everybody wants to talk at a high level, revenue opportunities, all these wonderful tactical words, strategic deployments to the market. Look, bottom line is this. You got to make money because you got to make money to survive. So you got to have something of value to offer to make that money. And if you don't offer something of value to make the money, you're screwed. That's how I would end it. That's simple. I'm sorry. We can be complicated about this, but businesses need to survive, offer value because you got to make money, period.
It goes back to that simplicity you talked about and you set it best. Yeah. Victor, and by the way, everyone who has joined us live, thank you for being here. Dan Jordan, he loves the term outsource yourself to chance as well. Dan's got some other clients. We'll put them in. I know you got to run. You got a noon call. Dan, you can ask Victor. Victor. But Victor, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to put links to everything. But for everyone listening or watching right now, Sales Velocity Academy, Sales Influence Podcast, Victor Antonio. We'll put all those links. Where's the best one-stop shop to learn more about Victor Antonio?
VictorAntonio.com.
Nice and easy.
There it is.
By the way, can you still find your show on streaming anywhere? Life or Debt?
Yes, Amazon and Hulu have it. And if you want to watch some previews, just type in Life or Debt, Victor Antonio.
Excellent. Well, Victor, and don't forget to catch Victor. Follow him on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter. Follow Sales After Dark. It's incredible nuggets of wisdom. Victor, thanks so much for joining us today.
Kurt, you're awesome, man. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. Thank you.
Cool.